It's Washington in prime time against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here on Sunday Night Football. We've got your game preview right here on Ref the District. Welcome back to the channel. It's Rhett Mathew of the Cannon Fire podcast here on Ref the District to break down playoff football between our Washington Commanders and his Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a rematch of week one for both of these teams. Rhett, we appreciate you jumping back on here with us to break down this game.
I appreciate you guys. Quite literally right back where we began. I'm excited to see how this game plays out. Two very different football teams than the ones that met all the way back in week one. But who would have thought it played out this way, huh?
Yeah, I wanted to go back. I didn't get to it just yet, but maybe I'll have to go back up, make a short out of this to see what we talked about week one. And if maybe we predicted seeing each other in the playoffs, because that's what ended up happening.
Let it be known that I was one of the few people who gave Washington their props this year. I recognize that Jaden Daniels, I liked him a lot coming out of the draft, and I'm glad that with every week that goes by, that take is aging better and better. But he is the real deal. So I definitely think the Bucs in certain ways are going to have their hands full this weekend. It should be one hell of a game. Very competitive, I think.
Well, one of those competitions that we were talking about here on Ref the District was Marcus Lattimore dealing with a hamstring injury, but a lot of Washington fans expect him to play and renew this rivalry he has with Mike Evans. That's the talk, and it's the kind of a high talk here in the DC area. What's it like down in Tampa Bay as far as Mike Evans, who the team made sure that he was going to get to his 11th 1,000-yard receiving year? What is it there in Tampa? What's the talk against Marcus Lattimore?
Well, depending on the fans that you talk to, Mike Evans making sure he got his 1,000 yards this season may have been more important than making the postseason. Mike Evans means a lot to every fan of the Buccaneers organization. You know, I think when it's all said and done, even if he plays 2, 3, 4 more years at this point, he will be a top Buccaneer of all time. A lot of people have a very soft, special place in their hearts for a guy like Derek Brooks, and deservedly so. He was one of the best at his positions for damn near 20 years. He was Mr. Buccaneer, but Mike Evans is right there with him. So everybody's very happy to see him, make that happen. Took the last play of the game for them to make it happen. He missed 4 games this year, so the fact they were able to get it is really, really cool. And I think, for a franchise like the Buccaneers, who is still a small market in a lot of ways, still gets disrespected, I think, to have a guy like Mike Evans just continue to break through, continue to put himself on the national spotlight. That's a big deal for a lot of the fans down here. But Marshawn Lattimore, man, I got to tell you, this guy and Mike Evans. You guys were talking about it earlier. I heard it when I jumped in here. I don't think he's going to shut Mike down, but I do think that Lattimore is one of the few NFL players that legitimately can get the best of Mike Evans at times. Mike has plenty of highlights on the guy, but there's just as many games you can pull up between the Bucs and the Saints where there really wasn't anything going for Mike Evans or the rest of this Buccaneers pass attack. They shut down the Bucs twice handily in that 2020 season. One of them, they put up 48 points. The other one, they shut the Bucs out 9-0, but it was an incredibly frustrating day for the offense both times. So Marshawn Lattimore was a huge part of that. And, Dan Quinn's a good defensive coach. He has game planned for Mike Evans in the past as well. He had to play Mike Evans twice a year when he was coaching Atlanta. So I think they're going to try and do their best to capitalize on what Lattimore can do to slow down Mike Evans. He's one of the few guys that definitely still can do it. So I think that's going to be a huge matchup to watch.
It seems like Bucky Irvin has taken over the running back role down there in Tampa Bay. Rachaad White, I liked him. Are we going to be able to see any Rachaad White on Sunday, or is it mainly Bucky Irvin? And what's the future for Rachaad White looking like?
We talked about it after that regular season finale. They didn't have any carries at all for Rachaad White, and I was very surprised by that, because we talk about things that have changed since week one. Headed into week one of this season, I think a lot of people knew that Bucky Irvin was going to make an impact, but I don't think many people expected him to just outright take Rachaad White's job away. Now, with that being said, the Bucs still have 3 very capable running backs here. You just talked about Bucky Irvin. Rachaad White, an experienced veteran in his own right, and he is very potent in the pass game. I think Liam Cohen may have been saving some of his best work for the postseason, which I hope for. But they have this pony formation they run out of, which is both of those running backs on the field. You might see that a couple of times, but maybe 5 to 10 plays where you'll see Bucky Irving and Rachaad White on the field at the same time. From that formation, sometimes they have Rachaad White line up as a slot receiver. Sometimes he's the motion man, just some eye candy for the linebackers on an opposing defense. But I definitely think he gets a lot more involved in the game plan this week. Again, that game against New Orleans, I think, is the first time all year that I've seen him just not get involved at all. So I want to say that he gets more involved this week, but even if he doesn't, I really like this kid, Bucky Irving. There's not a lot of fans down here.
He looks good.
Dude. I've seen people talking about it. When you try and rank some of the top draft picks this year that were not from the first round, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Bucky taken from Oregon out of the fourth, third or fourth round pick. This kid is just killing it. The Bucs have not had a 1,000-yard rusher on the ground since 2015 when Doug Martin was back there doing the damn thing.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, if they get,
There's a name.
If they get, yeah, right. If they get Sean Tucker involved, then I want to assume that the rest of the run game is fluid and running very, very well. But as far as Rachaad White, you would kind of asked, I expect him to get in the game a little bit more this week, but he's going to be more potent in the pass game. Bucky can just run over anybody. He's a weapon, dude. He is fun to watch.
Yeah, he's run for over 5 yards a carry, almost 5.5 yards a carry, 1,000 plus 1,000 yards there as well. Playoff football, a lot of people try to distill it down to, can you run the football and can you stop the run? Where does Tampa Bay run defense, line up against this potent Washington, who does have their own strong rushing attack, whether or not it's Jaden Daniels, Brian Robinson? A lot of us are calling for Chris Rodriguez a little bit more, but you even have Austin Eckler coming back from concussion, who's going to be in the backfield for Washington. How does the defense handle a dynamic running attack from Washington?
The Bucs, their defense has really been the source of a lot of their major issues, I would say, in the 2024 season. Some turnovers on the offense every now and again can cause some problems, but really soft coverage, a poor secondary, allowing quarterbacks to throw all over has been a lot of their major issues. But I would say against the run, they've done a decent job. Like, the only running back who really got his against the Bucs this year, I would say, is probably two, Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. And the only reason you can look at the stat sheet for both of those guys and say that they had good days running the football is because Saquon Barkley had like a 64-yard run, and I think Derrick Henry had an 80-plus yard run towards the end of the game. Outside of that, they've done a decent job at shutting down a lot of these very, very run-happy teams with potent running backs. I ultimately think it depends on Vita Vea. That's the thing, too. Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey, especially, these guys in the interior defensive line, they have just taken away all kind of run chances for any opposing team. If they're looking to move inside their offensive linemen, if they're looking to run to the inside, if they're looking to shoot the A gap or the B gap, 350 pounds of Polynesian power is usually going to be there waiting for them. There's not been a lot of opportunities for teams to really break away and run the ball effectively. I think most of the teams who have been able to do it are the teams who, just like the Saints last week, and even Dallas when they had, lost that primetime game, it's the teams that can control the football. It's not the teams that are putting the hands on their running backs and running for 150, 200 yards to take over the game. It's the running back that can get you 3 yards on first down, 4 yards on second down, and then set up an easy back-breaking third and short conversion. There's been a lot of drives this season for the Buccaneers defense where they've been on the field for 8, 9, 10, 11 minutes. And those are the kind of games where they fall behind. So, the run defense, I think, is going to be able to contain to a degree the weapons that Washington has. But the confidence of Jaden Daniels and his ability to make plays with his legs, again, the full season that he now has under his belt compared to week one, Todd Bowles is still a guy with some playoff experience. Jaden Daniels is still going to be a rookie quarterback in the postseason, but I think when it comes to the run game, he's probably the biggest threat to Tampa Bay. His ability to extend plays out of the pocket and just get out of dodge when he has to. The Bucs have been poor tackling unit on defense as well, one of the worst in the NFL this season, to be honest with you. So I think Jaden Daniels is going to get his. I think to a degree they are going to have some nice numbers, but
he did run well week 1. Jaden Daniels with 16 carries, 88 yards, 5.5 yards a clip, and importantly, 2 touchdowns that game.
Yeah, I definitely think he is still a threat, much more than he was in week 1. And you just read off the numbers there, so saying it enough. And it's, but I think overall, it might be a losing battle if they force the run after so long, depending on how this one shakes out as well. I just talked about, the Bucs falling behind to a lot of these teams. It's because of a slow start on their end. The first half of that Saints game, the first half of that Dallas game, up until the Saints game in week 18, the Bucs were 0-6 when the opponent scored first. So if it's a slow start for the Buccaneers offense and you've got a Washington unit that is just moving the ball at will, it could be a very frustrating afternoon. The Bucs had to rally to take down the Saints in the second half. The Saints are not a playoff team. So, if the Bucs don't start hot here, it could be a long afternoon. But I definitely think with the firepower that Washington has, and again, just the threat of Jaden Daniels, the type of quarterback he is, the blueprint, if you will, for his play style, he is a buck killer through and through. So it could be a long day.
Well, you heard it, Trev. Score first, and
that's all we got to do
to win this game. They're 1-6 so far against teams that have scored first.
I'll take it. So let's get to X factors. Who are the Buccaneers that we should either look out for, or probably just started getting to notoriety over the last few weeks that can have an impact on this game on Sunday? I know you guys brought back a familiar face, and Shaq Barrett is back in Tampa, right? Do we look forward to seeing him being the Shaq Barrett we know, or is that just like a whatever kind of deal?
At this point, you got to respect Shaq for what he's done. He's going to be in the Buccaneer history books forever. Still to this day, the single season sack franchise leader, 19.5 sacks in a season for him back in that 2019 season. But I think the Bucs are just hoping for him to maybe have 1 or 2 splash plays a game. 31, 32 years old at this point, coming out of retirement. It's a good fit for the Bucs because they've needed all the help they can get along the defensive line this season, specifically in that pass rush in the edge rusher room. Kalijah Kancey and Vita Vea, both of those guys had over 7 sacks from the interior defensive line. Kalijah Kancey, second-year defensive tackle, one of my favorite players on the team, led the team with 7.5. Vita Vea was right behind him with 7. Not ideal, especially not ideal when you've got an edge rusher who, Yaya Diaby, had 7.5 sacks, almost 8 sacks, I believe, in his rookie season. He did just get named Defensive Player of the Week for the NFC, had a really good week pressuring the quarterback last week. But overall, this pass rush just hasn't generated natural pressure with 4 down linemen all year. And that's also something I think is going to allow Jaden Daniels to have some success. If the Bucs pass rush cannot get there, if they sell out on the blitz to try and bring pressure, which they've had to do a couple of times, and it has worked. When they beat the Chargers a couple of weeks ago, one of their more impressive wins on the year is because they had really found success with the blitz. The linebackers were hitting Justin Herbert. They were forcing him to make mistakes. He threw one of, I think, only 1-2 interceptions of his season against Tampa Bay because the blitz was affecting him. So, that's a big factor. But I would say on the defensive side of the ball there, Shaq Barrett, you're hoping for a splash play. He is a veteran. But as far as X factors on the offensive side of the ball, I think with all the hype around with all the hype around Bucky Irving, Jalen McMillan is getting lost in the shuffle a little bit here.
Really good last few games with Chris Godwin out.
7 touchdowns over the last 5 games of the Buccaneers season. There's still parts of his game that he absolutely can step up and still develop. I think there were a couple of points this year, especially after Mike Evans and Chris Godwin had gone down and they were missing both of those guys for a couple of weeks there. You had hoped McMillan would step up a little bit sooner, but I mean, better late than never at this point. He has absolutely exploded these last several weeks. And, the whole finger gun debacle, I don't know if all that the Buccaneers got a load of against New Orleans, but he got a first down, did a little celebration. They decided to throw the flag after not throwing it for 18 weeks. But the first thing he did as a rookie wide receiver in the NFL was go over to the sideline, apologize to his teammates and apologize to his coaches. And then 2 plays later, he caught a big time touchdown, probably one of the most impressive throws from Baker Mayfield this season. So he is an impact player for sure these last several games. And I think his presence as a rookie is going to be kind of slept on because of Bucky Irving and the year that he's had with this offense. But Jalen McMillan, if he can keep his head on straight and he can play a complete 4 quarters, he could be an underrated pass catcher for the Bucs this week.
Well, talking about maybe some X factors from the Buccaneers side and somebody who is potentially underrated league wide, it's Baker Mayfield throwing for 4,500 yards this year, 41 touchdowns to only 16 interceptions. Kind of having a resurgence and has one of my favorite moments, maybe partially because I am a Sooner myself. So Baker holds a special place in my heart here in Oklahoma. Him stiff arming Bosa down the line and still throwing, one of the best plays all season, not Washington, as far as I'm concerned. Why do you think Baker is not looked highly? And are Tampa fans as down on him as I think the rest of the league seems to be? A lot of people feel like Baker gives the opposing team more of a chance to win than he does give Tampa a chance to win. Is that the case you feel in Tampa?
I think it depends on who you ask. There are certainly sections of the fan base who full on believe that he's not the guy. They believe that the Bucs cannot be a Super Bowl team with Baker Mayfield. And then there's other people who feel like he is the second coming of Jesus Christ. So I'm a fan of Baker Mayfield. I got to say, just as someone, we talk about the eye test, someone who commands respect from his teammates, someone who can light a fire up under his entire team. He is a guy that does all those things and then some. And it just makes him easy to root for. Like, for example, the turning point for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the Saints. They looked like crap in that first half. It was terrible. They looked like a team that had already made the postseason. They looked like a team who did not care to be there. And on the first possession of the third quarter, Bucs are trailing by 2 possessions. They need a score, right? I think 72-yard field in front of them. Baker Mayfield uses his legs, converts for the first down, lowers the shoulder, decks the safety, and then stands over him and taunts him. Could have had a flag. Didn't get a flag. But
in Baker's defense, having watched
the rest of the offense came over. The offensive line started pushing and shoving. Great. You got guys getting vocal, guys getting animated. And I got to tell you, that's what that team needed in that moment. He knew exactly what he was doing in that moment.
He walked away from that one like a boss. Like it was an explosion going behind him. And in his defense, it wasn't that he just nearly stood over the guy. And because he pushed the guy back down the ground, that's where he probably deserved a flag. But the defensive player did grab Baker's jersey or his pads as Baker was trying to stand up, which forced Baker to kind of give that menacing look. But then, as the offensive line and the explosions happen, Baker walks back out to the middle center field like, all right, we got to play, guys. We got to do something. And you're right. It was a great turning point for the Buccaneers.
They had to wake
up. We were
up
watching because we needed to know who we were going to play against. So that's
they had to wake up. They had to produce, and I think that's really been their biggest problem this year on the offensive side of the ball. Baker Mayfield included. Some of the losses that they've had have been complete team losses. Baker, as much of a fan as I have been of him this season, he played no doubt the best season of his career. But there are those games where if he can find himself rattled in the second quarter and he's not trusting his offensive line, if he's not relying on his pocket to keep him clean, he does get those happy feet. He can run into sacks. He can kind of play hero ball. And sometimes it forces a turnover. Sometimes you get a costly fumble. Sometimes you get just trying to make a play. There's nothing there. And unfortunately, disaster strikes. It's happened a couple of times this season. But I would say for the most part, most people down here with Baker, they believe in the guy. They like the guy. His teammates love him. He's easy to root for, in my opinion. And with Tampa Bay, everybody loves that underdog feeling. And I think Baker Mayfield approaches every single game, every single day of his life with a chip on his shoulder. And a lot of people down here resonate with that. The Bucs were a terrible football team for 20 years. And now they are the only team in the NFC to make the postseason the last 5 years. So now there's a little bit of a standard to uphold. And, I think Baker's doing the best that he possibly can. So I personally like Baker Mayfield. I think the Bucs can win with Baker. Now the conversation with the head coach is very different. That's a divisive conversation. You want to talk about Baker Mayfield being opinionated for fans down here. The Todd Bowles conversation is interesting, but I like Baker. I think he's the guy. I think the Bucs are getting a great return on their investment. I think he is like 19th among quarterback salaries for starters in the NFL right now. 2 years left on that deal. Jason Light doing one hell of a job.
So, how do you feel like you can win on Sunday? What makes you think that you still can do what you did in week 1 now that 17 weeks have gone by or 18 weeks have gone by?
I think Liam Cohen and this offense, to be honest with you, they are at a level that we have never seen. I mean, statistically, they are the most efficient offense in Tampa Bay Buccaneers history. I'm trying to find it. I had it written down here. Sorry, you know how the notes get. They get a little crowded sometimes. So the Buccaneers offense in 2024, they became the first team in NFL history to complete 70% or more of their passes and rush for at least 5 yards per carry, all in the same year. They can attack you in different ways. They have an offensive coordinator that can make adjustments after halftime, and he can change the way that he attacks you in the second quarter. We have, I got to give Todd Bowles credit. This defense has been porous at times. They have been bad at everything this year. This Buccaneers defensive unit is special because they suck at everything, but he is very good at making adjustments in the second half of these football games. Since the bye week, since week 12, over their last 7 games, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers only gave up 26 points in the second half. So the main reason I think they can win is the offense. That is the biggest thing that I think is going to keep the Buccaneers in this matchup. I would say overall for the philosophy for the rest of the year. I mean, any game that you go into from now until the end of your season, you just have to score as many points as possible. Yeah, I know it sounds really stupid, but you gotta start quickly. You need to get points on the board. If it's not the first drive, then you get a stop, and you need to be the first team to score points. But they need to score and not look back. They need to not play down to their competition. They need to go into halftime with a 2-possession lead and be just as aggressive in that third quarter to find the end zone again, because they have allowed themselves to collapse at times this year, and that's just not going to fly in the postseason, especially if you have an offense that cannot figure things out. They lost in Dallas because of a slow start on offense. They almost lost to New Orleans because of a slow start on offense. They were luckily able to figure it out. Defense was able to get some big time stops down the stretch, and they were able to win the game. But that's not going to fly against better teams. It's not going to fly against the 12-5 Washington team who is in the postseason. Like, these are playoff teams for a
And
reason.
also known for coming back.
Exactly.
Lots of late game heroics coming from Washington this year.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
So, I think the Bucs on the offensive side of the ball have shown me this year that they can win in more ways than one, which I'm very excited for. But with the defense playing the way that they have been suspect. I don't entirely trust them for 4 quarters here. And the turnover margin is another point of discussion as well. I think Washington came into this game, what are they, +1?
I would have to look, but yeah, they're not as good as we'd want to be. They've had a couple bad games. The Philadelphia game, 5 turnovers did not help.
I believe they're in the positive, but the Bucs are -6.
Yeah.
And one of the things this offense has done well at times is bounce back after a misstep. When they played the Saints the first time in New Orleans, they hung 51 points on them, but they looked like crap all throughout that second quarter. Like, they just weren't doing anything. They couldn't get out of their own way at times. So when the offense is on, when they're scoring points, in my humble opinion, I think the only team that can beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that's when the offense is humming. That's when everything is working the way that it should. But we know how things go in the NFL. It doesn't ever work the way that it should. So if it's a slow start for this offense, again, I think it could be a very long afternoon. But if the Bucs are in a position where at the end of the first quarter it's 13-3 or 10-0, and Washington has to play catch up, I think that is a favorable position for the Bucs to be in. But it's all about a hot start. 9-1 this year when they score first, 1-6 when they don't. So we shall see.
Yeah, we got to score first.
Several similarities there because Washington going to rely on its offense because its defense isn't necessarily up to snuff, and a lot of late game or heroics that you can't necessarily rely on. TJ had a question for you before I get to my final one. TJ here asking, is Cade Otton playing? Because, man, Washington can't guard tight ends.
Man, it's going to be interesting to see, and I think that's an injury that Bucs fans are not talking enough about. Today was just a walkthrough, so they had a full practice today. Cade Otton would have been listed as limited. Apparently, he is trending in the right direction, but that guy had a career season. And again, with the fireworks on the offensive side of the ball, you got all these pass catchers. Everybody's caught up, and Mike Evans getting his 1,000 yards, Bucky Irving kind of being the guy. Cade Otton was having a career season, and the week that he was not in the lineup against Dallas, they could not run the ball very well. Now they have found ways to run the ball since then, and they have a good enough offensive line to do so, but that's a huge part of his game that I think not a lot of people were talking about. Now, if he's limited, my guess is no, but it is interesting that you bring up the tight end position because the Buccaneers have a rookie tight end named Devin Culp, who is an undrafted free agent. And he had played up until a few weeks ago. He had literally only played 5 snaps through 10 games. And then Cade Otton goes down. He comes into the lineup, makes his debut, and he's looked good. Man, he is a big, sneaky, athletic tight end. I don't know if this playoff run is going to be where he breaks out per se, but if he regularly finds himself in the lineup next year for the Bucs and they still have Liam Cohen as offensive coordinator, Devin Culp could be a sneaky problem for a lot of teams. Payne Durham as well has kind of stepped up, and he's played well, but I don't think either one of those guys are as potent of a pass catcher as Cade Otton has been. He was one of the main targets that stepped up when the Bucs were missing Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. So right now it's a hard maybe. My gut says no, but never say never. Today he would have been limited, so we shall see. Todd Bowles said he's trending in the right direction, though.
Well, it'll be a matchup to watch there on Sunday night. Mike had pointed out the Bucs are 2-1 against us in the playoffs, so he's really scared for the Commanders. Things might go different. Jordan's going to be there in person ahead of the game, leaving Sunday morning, then going back home right after the game. That is going to be a late night for you. It's going to be a late night here on Ref the District. We'll have an instant reaction that night. Doesn't matter if it's after midnight. The old guys will be staying up and providing your instant reaction. You can catch that live here on YouTube and Facebook. It'll be posted afterwards. Right, we appreciate you jumping on with Ref the District, but we can't let you go without giving us how you feel the game's going to go and a score, if you please.
Absolutely.
Choose wisely. Choose wisely.
Oh, man. Well, I was going to throw this in there as well. A fun fact, the Buccaneers is going to be wearing red and pewter for this matchup. They are 6-1 all time in the postseason wearing red and pewter uniforms. The one loss that they have,
Washington Commanders,
is to the good old Washington Commanders. So
love to see.
We shall see. I'm also a little superstitious about really dumb stuff like uniform colors. 2020, that 2020 season, the Buccaneers were undefeated in their white jerseys and pewter pants. They won the goddamn Super Bowl. And they were undefeated in that color combo for quite a while. I think 2021 when they lost their first game against wasn't the Rams. I don't remember. It's not important. But anyways, this is going to be a fun game. I think the NFL wants to put the rookie on a national stage, and that is another thing that scares the hell out of me. Is the Buccaneers played 4 primetime games this year? They didn't win a single one of them.
Let's go.
Yeah, they look like shit on primetime
Let's
this year.
go.
Pardon my language, but yeah, the Bucs look like crap on primetime this year. So I'm hoping that they show up.
Come
Man,
on,
oh,
Rhett.
man. Jane Daniels too was the one quarterback I didn't really want to see.
He shines in prime time.
I know he's a rookie. I know he's a rookie,
Rhett.
and I think that the rookie experience is going to give Todd Bowles the edge there for sure. Because just like week 1, Todd Bowles is going to show Jane Daniels something on the defensive line that he hasn't seen all year. It's just he's saving his best for the postseason. With that being said, competitive game, back and forth game, maybe frustrating at times. Whoever takes care of the football is going to win this game. Whoever wins the turnover battle is going to win this game. The Buccaneers defense only has 7 interceptions on the year. They have been terrible at taking the football away. If Baker Mayfield can protect the football, which I think he can, this Buccaneers offense is going to put up, oh shit, feels like a lot for a playoff game, but I'm going to say 31-28 final score. I can't come on here and not pick the Bucs. So 31-28, I think the Bucs win this game, but literally could go either way. I am very excited and anxious for this matchup here.
Let's hear it, Trev. Let's sing it. Let's sing some Hail the Commanders. Who do you got, my man?
I'm going to have to go with the Commanders 27-23. I think you guys will be 23-20 for a lot part of the fourth quarter. We'll come down and do what we always do and score a fourth-quarter touchdown, hold you guys away, and win 27-23.
No, it's pretty close to P&Ws here, 27-20 Skins, my prediction. But got to be at work. Got to take care of something. All right, you have a good one there. TJ, 28-24 with the Commanders. Gregory, 31-27 Bucks.
Yeah, Greg.
Our Debbie Downer there, Gregory, in the chat. Now, we put a poll up, and 1,000 votes in. 91% say Washington Commanders are going to win this game. Of course, we might be a little bit bias here on Ref the District and wearing our burgundy and gold glasses. I called Washington making it out of the wild card round 3 weeks ago.
You did.
And I got to stick it to the guns here. Washington's going to win. And I do think that there's going to be some late game heroics involved in here. We're going to go 34-27 Washington. So we'll see how things go. It's a Sunday night matchup, prime time. Our Washington Commanders again, Rhett Mathews, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You can catch Rhett on his own podcast. We have had a couple Buck fans come in. Where can they find you here as a Buck and here shouting you out?
Every platform at Cannon Fire Podcast, social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. All of your podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podbean at Cannon Fire Podcast, Believe.com, Cannon Fire Podcast, and YouTube.com/Cannon Fire Podcast. You can watch us live over there immediately following the game. If you are a Bucs fan and you're looking for something to do, we are pretty much always live immediately after the game. YouTube.com/Cannon Fire Podcast. Win, lose, or draw, we are going to be breaking it down. And man, for the stage that it's on, you got to like primetime for Under the Lights for the aesthetic of it. But I hate primetime games. One, because the Bucs always look terrible on primetime. And two, you've already said this, Nathan. It's going to be a late night, dude. We're going to be show till 2 a.m, which is always such fun when you've got work the next day.
Yeah. I am thankful. This is like the few times I'm thankful to be in Oklahoma rather than the DC coast, because that 1 hour difference helps quite a bit. Yeah, it helps just a little bit. Well, Rhett, we do appreciate you coming on here. Do go check out his channel and his podcast. As you can tell, very knowledgeable there. And as Roger here is telling you, hit that like button. Be a fan here for Ref the District. This has been your game preview here on Ref the District with Cannon Fire Podcast. Looking forward to the matchup Sunday. Rhett, you have a wonderful night here.